Latinos para Centroamérica.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Central American Voices podcast. Today, we are in Sazón Pilates Studios here in the city of Bellflower. And today we are with Michelle Myra, the founder and owner of the studio. And we're going to talk a little bit about her heritage, a little bit about Pilates, a little bit about just everything. But first, I want to welcome you to the podcast. Welcome to being here. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here. I really love what Central American Voices podcast is really doing. You know, growing up as a millennial in the 90s and 2000s, we didn't have an identity. We didn't have, I think a lot of us Central American Latinos, we were classified as Mexicanos. And even though we understood that we were different amongst each other, we didn't really have a community or support or visibility for other Latinos. And it's just such an honor to be part of the movement that you ladies are creating, but also to be a guest on Central American Voices podcast. So thank you.
Well, thank you for being here and also for opening the doors to the studio. And we're going to talk a little bit more in the studio. But first, I wanted to go back to the beginning. So you were born here in the city of Bellflower to Guatemalan parents. So how was for you growing up, like, being Guatemalan in the United States? I know you talk a little bit, but like, how was that for you, like in the 90s?
Really good question. I think like a lot of us who are immigrant first gen kids, we kind of have like this like beautiful opportunity to not only be born here, but some of us were all like, including me, after my parents had me, they sent me to Guatemala for a couple of years, and my abuelita raised me in Guatemala, right? And my parents did that as an opportunity to kind of become better for themselves. They used this opportunity to go to night school and to kind of like have a little bit more of education and later more opportunities. So I was essentially kind of raised in Guatemala up until like 6. Y después vine para acá. But I was in like an ESL program. And so I was in ESL porque, you know, viví en Guatemala y hablaba mucho español. So el first grade, second grade, y como third grade era más que todo ESL. So then I was going to school in Bryson. And growing up in the 90s, like as I said earlier, and being of Guatemalan parents, my mom died really young, right? So she died when I was 9. So my dad raised me. And I was raised by a nana from Guatemala. And actually the lady who raised me, Mama Fulvia, she knew my mom growing up in Guatemala. My mom knew her, and all my family knows Mama Fulvia because in el mercado, Mama Fulvia would sell food. So, you know, we would live like 5 blocks in el mercado. A veces no se cocinaba en la casa. So, you know, we grew up eating Mama Fulvia's food. So it was kind of a really nice opportunity because my mom had just passed away, but Mama Fulvia really knew and loved my mom. So she was able to raise me for a couple of years growing up in Southgate, Bellflower area.
That's so beautiful because I think, like you said, yes, you were born here, but your first foundation year was in Guatemala. And like you moved here and you had to go through like ESL. Would that, it was a little bit culture shock, and then like the loss of your mom, would that, like, how was that period of you like coming back, losing your mom after 3 years, and I had to grow up with your Mama Fulia? That's how it, okay, Mama Fulia.
Yeah, it was kind of really hard because, you know, like ni de aquí ni de allá, right? And then especially not having a mom and having my dad, right? So oftentimes we hear a lot of stories of, you know, being single moms raising the kids, right? But we don't really hear single dads raising kids, right? So as mamás, la ropita, la cocina, el cuidado, la comida, it's kind of there, right? But my dad had to be a different kind of provider. You know, he had to go to work, like maybe no time to cook and do things for me. So growing up was kind of a culture shock porque, you know, I had my family to help me in Guatemala. And then when I come here, it's like I'm kind of living with my mom and she has a job and I go to school and I'm learning this language. And there was, ESL was like kind of like back in the day, I want to say not as normalized, right? We talk about how we need more ESL in schools today, but when I was growing up, like ESL was like, oh, you're in ESL. It was a different world. because we did not have the awareness and the support in public education system that we have now.
I also went to ESL, and so I can relate to that ESL part, because it's like when I was in ESL, it was all substitute professors, and I still remember, like, I was like you're coming back, like you're coming to this country, you don't know the language, and it's like a whole system, and like you don't feel supported, and then you're going through your own adjustment, you know, your own, okay, how does this life feel here? And even though like you were born here, you were going through that through ESL, right? And a lot of time, like how you mentioned, here in LA, we have one of the biggest culture is Mexico, right? And I feel like Central American culture kind of like gets, in a sense, overshadowed, right? Even though like LA is so diverse and it's so beautiful, diverse, but we get overshadowed a lot. During those times, we have talked about a little bit of being proud to be Central America. How was for you feeling proud of being Central America, or is that is something that you had to learn later on, even though like you grew up in Guatemala? Like, how was that experience of being like, I'm proud to be Central America, or like Guatemalan, going through a system like, for example, ESL, like you said, there's no support, or being in a city that might not like sometimes see us?
That's a beautiful question, and thank you for asking. I think the orgullo de ser guatemalteca en Chapina, it was really planted in me, not because necessarily of my family, but because I was raised in Guatemala for, you know, like what we call the child development formative years. I grew up without agua caliente, and like me calentaban el agua, right? Y me bañaba ahí con la cubeta, and I had my abuelita, and I grew up in just kind of like a different world, that when I did come back to live, it was kind of like I didn't forget those roots, right? Like something that we take for granted, and that it's kind of always stuck with me, is like, you know, when I came here, we were living, I would turn on the water, y salía hot water, right? And it was just something like so little that I didn't have like when I was living in Guatemala, because we had to put the agua en hay que hervir el agua y la pones a cubeta y luego guacalazos, right? And so it was just kind of like those little things that really kind of brought the orgullo of being Guatemalteca growing up. But I didn't know it was orgullo. It wasn't something that we talked about, right? In my household, because it was just me and my dad, nunca teníamos como, oh, somos chapines, right? Porque era mi papá y yo. That's my only family. That's my nucleus family, right? I do have a stepbrother, but, you know, that's kind of a different story. But I think the orgullo de Centroamérica really came, and it might be kind of going fast forward into your future questions, is when I was living in China. And when I was living in China for about 7.5 years, you know, I felt like I was always proud to be Latina, but I didn't really understand that I was Latina. I didn't know what being Latina was, because it's part of like my everyday culture. I'm in LA, and we're very privileged to live in a Latino place. So none of this was to me something exclusively Latino. It was like we just get Latino food, you go to a Latino market, and then if I wanted to feel different, I can go to Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, and I can have that like experience, you know? So it was kind of like that. But when I was in Asia, and I started to meet other Latinos like Colombia, Españoles, El Salvador, Mexico, it was like, soy guatemalteca. And that is, I feel like where what was planted in me with my abuelita and growing up, it kind of was like a revival of that in Asia.
And I think that's very interesting and beautiful, because I wanted to ask you, here in the United States, I feel like a lot of times we feel that we're being erased of our culture, or like just isolated. Like you said, just you and your dad, and you didn't grow up like, yes, Guatemala, you know? But inside my home or your house, it's like, that's normal, because that's my everyday, and you lived in Guatemala. But outside, it feels like I can't be like, you know what I mean? I'm proud of it. Like, it feels like sometimes here, it feels like a little bit, it feels like they want to erase, and for us to be proud from where we come from, where our family come from. But I feel like in Asia, for example, in China, where you are meeting other people and feeling the way of like how proud they are, it's like, yeah, I should be proud of that. No matter where I am and what part of the country is, I'm proud of my roots. I'm proud of where I come from. Do you think that was a the reason why you feel like you said more proud in, no, I'm not saying more proud, but that feeling of being proud of being Chapina or Guatemalteca had to do because of the places or in like how the United States sometimes?
No, I think you're 100% accurate because I feel that like as Latinos, we're put in the box of like Hispanic.
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh, like Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, South American, because we're all so different. And I think that here it was kind of like growing up, I was put in the Mexico box. But when I was in Asia, I could be Guatemalteca. And everybody was like, oh, you're from Guatemala. You're from Guatemala. Tell me about it, right? Because you meet Europeans and you meet people from Africa, you meet people from all over the world in the expat, immigrant communities there. And everybody's interested to learn about your culture and things like that. So it was really easy for me to kind of feel a sense of pride and talk about my country without feeling that I was going to be put in the Mexico box.
Okay.
Or the Latino box.
Okay. You could be your own box.
I could be like talk about my frijolitos negros and talk about hilachas and tejidos and other things like that were uniquely Guatemalteco.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful. And I feel like I wanted to ask you too, because you lived in China for 7 years, which I think to me I was like, what? and how beautiful your experience over there. What did make you go over there? We can talk a little bit of like, what did you decide? You know what? Let me go to Asia and cross the countries and the continent to go over there. What was that decision?
So I'm actually like a nerd. I really like history and art. It's like pride and joy. I think part of the reason why I really like art history is because a lot of when it's not erased by the big white man, in art and history, you can really understand culturas and the artists and the people. And so I fell in love with art history, right? And one of my passions was Asian art history, and it still is. And I spent a lot of time doing Asian art. So actually I kind of focused on Asian art as a specialty. So after college, I applied for a job as what we call art director. And my job was, optical glasses. So instead of saying black and brown and, blue, my job was to come up with creative names. So I was working on a cruise line for a big company, and they were going from Australia to Indonesia and like what we call Oceania, right? Like Papua New Guinea y esas islas pequeñas. Okay. And I was going down a deep, deep, deep loophole of everything Indonesia. And I saw an ad one time. I said, oh, teach English in Indonesia. And here, I'm actually in California. I'm a registered like pre-K and K teacher. And so I was teaching after school and doing some programs. So I said, oh, you know what? Like, I'm not actually really happy with this job and I don't like it. So I said, okay, let me apply, right? They're not going to accept me. So like, whatever, pero I'm going to take the risk and do it because like, why not? So I applied and they were like, oh, you know what? Unfortunately, the position was taken. You just missed the window. And I was like, okay, no pasa nada. But they're like, oh, but there's actually a lot of positions in China. And I said, oh, okay. So then like I kept following up with them and then they offered me a job position. And I said I had a brother, so the baby was going to be born in the summer. So I said, you know what, I can go closer to the end of summer. So I said, okay, let me do it. And I think like the major reason why I wanted to go and why I decided to say, ¿sabes qué? Why not? Is because I knew that if I didn't do it then, I might not have another chance. And I really liked the art. And I said, well, I spent like 4 years studying this in a book and I know a lot about it. So I was like, you know what? Like, why not study this in person? The green flag was they bought a ticket for me. Eli and his wife, always grateful for them to go there. And then they would pay for my apartment. And then I would work, what was it, Wednesday through Sunday. So I would have like 2 days off in the week and I only worked the weekend. So I said, you know what? Like, I can do this. And I felt like, okay, I'm going to go, but I'm only going for a year. And long story short, that 1 year became almost 7.5 years for a span of just under 9 years in Asia. Yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it, was by clicking on one of those ads.
And I mean, I think it's like taking a chance on you. You know, like you said, like you went to Italy, you had already done like in Guatemala, and it's like, why not? You know what I mean? You're very passionate about art, especially Asia art, and it's like, well, if I get to teach some people and also experience the country that I've been studying for so long, why not? You know, and I think something that I find fascinating is that then you transition to sustainability.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So how was the transition to do sustainability around Asia? Because then I know, then I'm here in my timeline, then it came COVID. But like, can we talk a little bit about what was the transition to work in sustainability and what does that mean to you?
So I think to really understand why sustainability is so important in my life, we're actually going to go back to when I was 16. Okay. So I took a geometry. I was never really good at like applied mathematics, but that doesn't mean I'm not good at numbers. So it was just like, you know, like the applied mathematics that I wasn't really good at. So I had to take a geometry class at Cerritos College. So I was going for summer school. And, you know, there was people tabling like they do in colleges, right? So if you ever step foot on any campus, there's at least one tabling once a week. Yeah. And there was someone talking about pita. Now, I had never known what pita was. I'm a Latino household. You know, my dad loves taquitos for breakfast. I feel like if my dad could eat tacos for breakfast every day, he would, right? But he doesn't. So, you know, I was like, what is pita? And then they got me. They got me. I was like, oh my God. I think like within a week, I had gone on AOL and dial-up, and I was like, okay, like, and read encyclopedias about veganism, and I was like, okay, I'm vegan. Because why are we abusing animals, and this is not good? And so the seed of veganism and like vegetarian was kind of planted in me at 16. And that was kind of about it. Right, where we like, it stayed with me as a lifestyle and a dietary movement. And when I went to Guatemala, right, I had never observed this as a little girl, right? Pero, you know, in Guatemala and maybe like other places like in Asia and other países, sometimes like, you know, money is not as fluid, right? And so you go and you buy an agua fresca, pero maybe you don't have enough money to buy the whole agua. But you can buy like 3 quetzales de agua, right? Medio litro, or, you know, un vasito. Y te ponen un vasito en una bolsa de plástico, and they wrap it, y te dan tu pajilla, and then you go with your bolsita de agua, right? Mm-hmm. Or you buy a tamalito, y lo ponen en plástico, okay? Or you go to a mercado, y te dan todo en plástico, right? And so that was completely normal to me. But then imagine, you know, going to China. And now you're in this, I was at that time in 2013, China, I lived in China's 13th largest city, which might not seem like a lot to 13 years ago, right? But it was a complete culture change. Mm-hmm. So now imagine I'm living in a building with 28 floors, and then just like in Guatemala, just like in Honduras, just like in anywhere in the world, gente está vendiendo comida en la calle, and I saw the amount of plastic. And then it was like we're putting the food in a bag, tying a knot, putting the food in another bag. And then it's like 3 or 4 bags. And then you see the plastic, and then the whole concept of sustainability was kind of like, it became like a recurring thought. And so to kind of move forward with the story, I had already been a vegan, and I already had kind of implemented a zero waste lifestyle at that time. But it wasn't until I met my friend Joel, which I dearly love, and he's presently living in Taiwan. So Joel, if you're watching this, I love you and I miss you. And I met my friend Ellen, who is actually, she is from Georgia, and she's still living in China. And she had started like zero waste Guangzhou. And she started like educating and talking about like, you know, how can we save money, but also be more sustainable with our shopping. And so I kind of joined forces with her and Joel and my friend Chloe. Well, actually, I was texting earlier today. She's still in China, right? She's Chinese. I was texting her today. And we kind of moved forward with sustainability. And one of the major things that we started was clothing swaps, right? So we started doing clothing swaps because, sometimes we buy clothes because it's trending or we like it, or you buy it because it's on sale and you don't try it on, and then you go home and you're like, that was a waste of money. Right. And then book swaps, right? So imagine I'm an immigrant in China, and English books are kind of hard to get. Right. So then we were like, okay, well, what if we just start switching the books that we have, and we did clothing swaps? And our work got a lot of recognition. So then I became kind of like the zero waste expert and consultant. And that's how I got the opportunity to work with the Consulate of France, the Dutch Consulate, the American Consulate, and a few other consulates, as well as big international structures in the city of Guangzhou itself. And the movement was kind of born from there. And that's how Zero Waste Guangzhou was founded, and how we founded our business.
I love that. Because I feel like, we, like I said, it's very normal. That's so normal to put tu Coca-Cola en una bolsa y la página, tu Coca-Cola, and it adds up. It adds up. And I love, and I'm not going to fast forward anytime, because I feel like this ties down to, of course, Sazón. And your socks, but we'll talk that in a bit. But before we go and talk about not only this amazing studio, but also your brand, it feels like you have started over many, many times. Many times. And I feel like, earlier before even, don't worry. Even before we started recording, you shared with us about the year of the horse. How we're in the year of the horse, but when you moved to China, it was the year of the horse 13 years ago, which is a whole full circle moment. So can you talk about that? Like, how many times you have had to start over, and what does that mean, now, but also in a little bit, kind of like it's a 2-question in one. You had to come back.
Yes.
Because of COVID. Because technically you were like, if the world is ending, might as well go with that.
Yes.
And that is another story over. So can you talk about that? Like the cycles of your life of starting over, but also coming home back.
I feel like my whole life has been like starting over, right? From being sent to Guatemala to start, to coming to America and settling with ESL, and then my mom dying, and then starting over with my dad, and then, adulting, college, all of that, right? But I'm going to pick up right where we left off, which is right around 2020, when COVID was happening. I mean, I know that we all suffered, and we all experienced loneliness and oh my God, the world is falling apart. But I want to say that mine was a little bit more like the world is literally falling apart, because I was in China when COVID started happening. It was January of 2020. My roommate Liz and I actually probably had the first wave of COVID in China, right? But we didn't know it was COVID. We just thought it was a cold. So we both postponed our travels. Pero when we felt good, I decided to continue with my travel. So I went to Laos. Right? It's a country in Asia, and it's kind of very still Asian. So it's less perverse by the Western culture, and it's more Asian. It's more beautiful. Okay, I highly recommend everyone visiting, but keeping it authentic, keep Laos, please. So that's when we first started hearing about what COVID was. So fast forward a month, I was there with Joel. Remember who I started Zero Waste Guangzhou with? I was there with Joel. And Joel had moved to Vietnam. And then my roommate, who I caught COVID with, I mentioned earlier, Liz, she was also in Vietnam. So then I had a choice, because in Laos, they were smart. They were like, you know what? If you're a foreigner, you need to leave Laos now. You're not allowed in our country. So I had the choice of going back to China and being literally maybe alone. The idea of coming back to America is not an option for me at that time, because my life is in Asia. My whole life, my identity, my profession.
That was your home.
It was my home. I speak the language fluently. It is literally my home at this point. So coming back to America in 2020 is not an option for me yet. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to get on a bus, una camioneta, con pollitos y con toda la mara ahí, and we're going to just go across country, right? And I went to Vietnam. And I got to Vietnam on a Friday because I took the overnight bus. That's a good way to save money, is take the overnight buses because you don't pay for a hotel. You sleep on the bus, or you try to, right?
Yeah.
And so we got there, y luego el lunes, China announced we're closing the borders. So there was my first restart. And I was like, oh my God, this is real. Like, pardon my French, but shit just hit the fan.
Bad.
Because I'm in Asia, we're starting to hear what COVID is. Wuhan is already all over the news. I may or may not have contracted the first sign of COVID in China, right? Mm-hmm. And the borders closed in China. And then Vietnam already had closed its borders. Mm-hmm. But that was a strategic move on our behalf. Thanks to my friend Joel. He's like really clever. He's like, well, if no people are coming into Vietnam because they closed their borders, then that means it's going to be probably safer. So I said, yeah, you're smart. Let's do that. So we went, right? So on that Monday, I wake up and I was like, oh my God, okay. So I was like, it looks like I'm going to stay in Vietnam for, like a couple of months. And my job was like, don't worry, you can work remotely. We'll hire you. We'll figure this out. At the time, I was working as a college counselor and as a college teacher for students. And most of my time was spent honestly, I only taught the university 12 hours. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it was for Zero Waste Guangzhou. And then obviously I was already teaching Pilates at that time. So I was like, okay, we're going to be in Vietnam. So that was restart number one. And I was kind of working and living off my savings. But then like in 2021, I had the great opportunity. I had two great job offers on the table. One of them was to stay in Da Nang, which is a beautiful coastal city. And I could get paid in US dollars, and it was like the greatest job of a lifetime. And then I had an opportunity to move up north, closer to Hanoi. Again, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. I would be living in a Vietnamese island, teaching English, right? Because that's basically what I was doing there. And I was like, well, I kept thinking about it. But if we go back, right? I had lived in Italy for like 6 months. Then I came back for a couple of months, and I went to Guatemala for about 4 months. Then I came back. Then in 2013, I went to China. So this was 2021. So at this point in my life, I've been in and out, mostly out of the United States. Out of those 10 years, out for almost 9 full years. So then I told myself, you know what? Like, I'm just going to go home and kind of figure it out. If the world is ending and if we're all gonna die, and if this has no cure, right, which is what we were being told at the time, then I might as well go home and be with my dad. Because I said, if my dad dies or if I die, I want to be there. And I think that what made the choice easier was that in 2020, my best friend Liz died in Vietnam. She kind of we don't know if it was committed suicide or if it was an accident, head-on collision with a car. And, I had to deal with calling her parents and telling her mom, and then working with the Consulado de Mexico, y luego identifying the body, and how do we move these ashes here to Mexico. And it was a very traumatic story. And then that's what I felt really pushed me to kind of come home, was because I experienced the grief and the hard process of how do you move a body in a third culture back home. And I didn't want that for my dad. I didn't want to die abroad during COVID and have my dad experience that. Not that I was gonna die, but I feel like that experience pushed me to say, ¿sabes qué? I'm gonna go home. So in 2021, I came back to the USA. So I came back in May 21st, actually a day before my mom's birthday. back to the USA. So in the span of like those 18 months, 24 months, I basically restarted three times, right? Living in Laos, living in Vietnam, and then coming back. So just kind of restarting really fast, right? And what a lot of people don't realize is I literally lost everything. My money was frozen. The cash that I had was lost. My apartment, my money, my home. And I had just signed the contract with the consulate of the Netherlands to do all of their education for their Asia consulates to do sustainability work with the consulate itself. So it was like a really kind of like sad defining moment in my life that I literally I lost everything. I had one carry-on when I got to Laos and Vietnam, and I lived off the carry-on for like a long time. I only bought things as I needed. And when I came back after 11 years in Asia, I came back with cacao, right, my little dachshund, a medium-sized suitcase, a backpack, and a large-sized suitcase. And that was unfortunately all I could bring back from 9 years in Asia almost. Yeah, so restarting is kind of normal for me, or maybe not normal, but I think that because life has just thrown those kinds of lemons at me, I've made a lot of limonada, and then restarting has been kind of like the theme.
Yeah. Wow. And to me, I feel like, when you were telling me the story, I was like, dude, like it's just so many layers. You know what I mean? It's like you move and like your best friend, and again, having your best friend and all this grief is also a reminder of like what happened with your mom, and like so those type of things. And I think that aside from the tragedy and all this thing, I think also you wanted like to come home, as you said, with your dad, because that's the only family member you have. And like, how was like now here had for you was like, okay, you already went through all those many circles of stars. How was that moving back and be like, okay, how now with my dad here in LA, you were doing sustainability and then you lost all these opportunities. But like, okay, but this is not the end of the world. You know what I mean? Even though it felt like it. It felt like we all are gonna die, during those years. How was for you, because you were already doing Pilates, how was for you now? Like, what did I was like, okay, actually, let me start Sazón. Let me start Pilates, because now I think Pilates, which I like to say, like it was not just physical healing, it was something more deeper. So how was that?
So I got into Pilates in 2018 because I like competitive individual like sports. So I was doing CrossFit and I hurt my shoulder. So I had to heal. So that summer I came to the USA and I took some Pilates classes, and like my dad works in Highland Park, so I didn't drive, so I would go with my dad to Highland Park. I would drop him off. I would take 1 or 2 Pilates classes, go hang out, and then like pick up my dad and then like come home. So I was doing Pilates in 2018 here. And then when I went back, my friend from Sunshine, she had just opened up like a smoothie store, a salad place. And it was like next to where a lot of the consulates were. So I would always be working in that area with the government offices. And so I would get a juguito. And then I saw a sign that said Studio Pilates, now opening. And I was like, oh, what is that? Like, I want to go, right? Because I knew what Pilates was from a book. But I knew what mat Pilates was because, like I said, I was vegan when I was a little girl. And I was always kind of like a herbalist and what natural ways. So it was in a book, but that was kind of all I knew. I had never done a class. So when I discovered Pilates, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I was enthusiastic. So, because a lot of my friends were in the government offices, I was bringing in a lot of foreigners. Okay. So my friend, as a business owner, she was getting her instructor to become a master trainer. So she asked me, Michelle, you bring a lot of clients. We know you love Pilates. She's like, do you want to become certified? And I was like, yeah, I'll do it.
I love it. It's like, yes.
Yes. No, no. And then I said, well, ¿cuánto va a costar? Y me dijo, ¿sabes qué? Nada, es gratis. And I'm always indebted to Sukai and Echo Wang because they literally changed my life. They didn't charge me for the certification because they saw like the work that I was doing and genuinely loved them, right? So I put myself through the whole program. And I was working and everything. So when COVID happened and I was in Vietnam and I was like mostly unemployed, I was doing Pilates at the beach. I had some other Latina friends. Leda, if you're watching, I miss you. And Valentina Bravo is, oh my God, Valentina Bravo with a name like that.
Oh, beautiful.
I mean, yes. And Mar, right? I would do Pilates with Mar. She's a Chilena, and then she's so radical, right? She had a shaved head.
Oh,
Y andaba en tanga en la playa cuando la conocí, and I was like, ¿eres hispanohablante? Sin pelo y con tanga, she became my best friend instantly, right? Mujer sola, right? Beautiful, beautiful. So we would do Pilates. And as a way of healing and kind of taking back into passion of what I wanted. So when I came back to the United States, I tried to get a few jobs as a teacher. And nothing was really biting. I was underqualified, I was too qualified, or they didn't want to pay me what I was asking for. So then I was like, you know what? I'm a Pilates teacher. Let me try to get a Pilates job. So I was like, okay, let's do it. So I applied and applied and applied. And then thank you to this fabulous Uruguaya, Antonella, right? She hired me in 2021. So I helped open up a big franchise. I don't know if I'm allowed to say their name, so I'm not going to say it. But I opened up one big franchise for them in West Covina in 2021. And after 2 years with the company, I grew really good. So I became a teacher training assistant. So that means that I recruited people to become teacher trainings. And I was kind of like their mentor. Let's get your hours. Like, let's get you to become a teacher. Because I was already a teacher, so I know what it takes to lead and to be successful and to kind of, my whole life I was teaching. So it was just kind of natural for me to guide. Then in 2013, I moved to a different studio, again, same big franchise, and I helped open up the Cerritos, the Cypress, and the Monrovia location. Mm-hmm. And then in 2024, I got the opportunity to work at a women's only gym in downtown LA, and I helped develop her program. And at the time, there wasn't Latinas in Pilates in 2024 was still kind of like it was there was a few of us that were on social media, right? Before it is what it is today. And she is a wonderful person. And she's like, you know what, Michelle, let's do Pilates, but let's do it in Spanish. And she opened up her studio to allow us to do Pilates in Spanish. And if you look at some of those videos, we have like 44,000, 122,000 video views on TikTok and Instagram back in the day. So we ran that program together. And by that time, I already knew that I wanted a studio. So I had already been doing the research and everything for the studio. And so that was kind of when the program kind of ended, that was a defining moment in me to open up my own studio. And so in 2025, that's when we got the physical location. So I've actually had the lease for a year. And actually, I'm going to go back because I think the first time I submitted my paperwork to the city is almost a year to the date of when we're opening up. Oh, wow. Yeah, I need to go back and look, but yeah. So that's kind of how Sazón was born, and to the concept of being born into the physical location. So it was the help of Sakai and Echo, to my friends in Da Nang, to Antonella, who took a chance on me. And opening up, I also opened up a studio, a Latina-owned studio in Whittier. So opening up 6 studios for other people before we finally get to open up our own studio.
Yes, and I love that because it feels like, again, this has been a full circle moment.
Yes.
Everything is a full circle moment because now you have Sazón Pilates Studio and you have your own brand, Sazón Pilates. ¿Es solo Sazón o es Sazón Pilates?
Sazón Pilates, LLC.
LLC.
And then we are do business as Sazón Pilates Studio and Sazón Grip. And we're all registered, Sazón Grip. And we're registered trademarks, so.
Yes. So can we talk more about your brand? Because I feel like, I got introduced by Brenda, which is behind the camera here, one of our producers. And I remember you gifted me this, a sock that says chingona. And I was like, oh, this is so cute. And I remember I put them on and I was like, these are the most softest socks ever. And I have friends that have bought from you and they're like, those socks are so soft. And I think this is where I said it was going to come full circle, you know, of sustainability, because your socks are a little bit, how would you describe that?
So
Like, I don't know how to describe it, but yeah.
when I was designing the socks, it was very important to create a product. Obviously, I already had the knowledge and like the kind of back burner, right, idea of something that is sustainable, eco-friendly, and super high quality, because I want my socks to last. I didn't want to have fast fashion, because I felt like fast fashion kind of goes against like me as a person and like my values, right? Because I love El Planeta and let's save the polar bears. Like I literally have a polar bear tattoo on my thigh. I'll show you. This is literally like a reminder of sustainability and like the planet and like just kind of like we're all together. Yeah. So Sazón Grip was born because I wanted everything to be sustainable. I wanted only the highest qualities for Latinos, because I feel that as like Latinos, a lot of times in our life, we get like the fast, cheap kind of thing. And I didn't want that. I wanted Sazón Grip to be the highest quality that Latinos can have in athletic wear for socks. So we use 100% organic cotton. We use Ocotex standard certified materials, and all of our packaging is actually designed to be zero waste. It's recycled cardboard paper, and our bags are biodegradable mailers. And I'm almost done negotiating the ends so that our hang tags will be biodegradable plastic. So while there are many socks in the market, the cost that goes behind our product is the best, because we deserve the best as Latinos. And I think that as a Latina-owned brand that is Guatemalteca, I really wanted to have Guatemala lead that with its pride and glory. And I didn't want it to be something that you didn't feel was something that you were proud of. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Oh, yes, and you're doing that because I feel like it's beautiful, and I feel like the love. I think I have said so much full circle, but it's like comes from the love of to the earth, to your culture, to deserving more, to taking chances on you, to traveling, to learning, to multiple things. It's like, you know what I mean? That's what Sazón Grips. And it represents that, and you represent that of just looking for better things for like the community. And like you said, if you want a moment, you can talk. Okay. Yeah, don't worry. No, don't worry. And I feel like one of the things that honestly, when I was talking to you prior to this interview, that I was like, oh, that's so beautiful, that you were like, oh, I want to see Latinos be proud within this space that we have not been included, but also to feel proud for those socks, because those socks have Spanish words. Those socks have countries' names. And it's like, you know what I mean? It's something that is like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I'm proud of those socks. You know what I mean? Like, I remember, I remember when I showed it to my friend, I was like, look, esa es chingona. You know what I mean? Like, it's like something so como una gente podría bien mínimo, but it means a lot to us. You know, it means a lot to feel connected to all these things, and the love that you do, having all this like research and sustainability for your culture, for the earth and everything is all connected, you know. So yeah,
I actually even went to the factory myself. I vetted 3 factories, so it was almost 8 months of research for manufacturers. And then when I found the top 3, I actually went back to China and I visited them, and making sure that the labor conditions, that the product and that certificates were like up to standard. And I think my favorite part of the socks is really representing Central American culture. I have Honduras, Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and we're working on more. And I really wanted us Central Americans to have visibility, because I feel like in every deporte, and I feel like, you know, like a lot of fashion designers and a lot of brands are like Mexican owned, and like I'm genuinely happy for them, but I think it's time that Central Americans take that lead. And that's why I really support her baby as well, because she is amazing and she's really bringing that like high end of fashion into her work. And not only is she's highlighting like Latino cultures, but really, really focus on Central American. Like I have a swimsuit because of her baby.
Would you like to showcase some of your socks and their name, like right here, so they can see?
Sazón Grip, right? The brand. And in September, we launched the Raíces collection, and it was inspired by our flag. So we have Guatemala, we have Nicaragua, yes, Nicaragua, and Mexico, Honduras, and of course, El Salvador. Yes, and we have a lot more that we're working on, but this is just what's released to the public right now. And like I said, for Sazón Grip, it's really important that we keep our mother tongue, Espanol. Our copywriting on the website is obviously bilingual, because I understand that no todos los Latinos hablamos Español. But I think it's the heart and soul of the company is just Central American love y Español.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's also so beautiful of like, it's algo tan, como decir, los calcetines, right? Like so little, but like that fills it with a lot of love. Like it's something that we're like, we feel proud. Like when we wear them, it's like, oh look, like I'm showcasing my culture, my pride, but also like they're good socks. You know what I mean? But I wanted to ask you why it was so important for Sazón Grip, Sazón Pilates, or Sazón Pilates Studio to be bilingual.
Great question, and thank you for asking me this. I think that it's really important to be bilingual, especially in the world of like Latinas and wellness, because just because you're playing Bad Bunny in the background and you're Latina doesn't mean that it is inclusive for Latinos. Espanol, being bilingual, and being unapologetically Latina and bilingual in your culture at the forefront is so important. And I wanted to give back to my community so that it is accessible for not just Latinas my age or your age who can do this, but that you can say, ¿sabes qué? Mi mami puede venir. ¿Sabes quién puede venir? Mi tía puede venir. Mi prima puede venir. Podemos venir en nuestro idioma. And that we're not limiting to just being catering to the English-speaking Latino market, but Espanol. Because I feel that growing up, I do not have access to wellness or resources in Espanol. Gracias Univision, right? Jorge Ramos, who was always teaching us and giving us that. But in terms of wellness, we didn't really have like a Latino or Latina doing that growing up. And I wanted Sazón to really embody that, not just in writing, but in doing, and being bilingual is non-negotiable for us.
Yeah, and I love that because it bridges generations, because, you know, like I said, it brings, or tias, mamas, you know, but also the new generation that is bilingual too, that they don't have to come from just to English. You know what I mean? Or other people that just speak Spanish, you know what I mean? I think that there's something beautiful of being bilingual and embracing that too.
I think being proud of being bilingual and being super like joyful about speaking Espanol is so important to me, because Spanish is my first language. And I feel like for so many years, we were told to shut it down. We were told we cannot speak Spanish. A lot of us didn't learn Spanish because our parents were afraid to teach us Spanish. And so now that I'm an adult and I have the ability to create this space, doing it bilingual is like the main force, because I don't want to shut it down. I don't want to be told that we can't do it in our language. And it's kind of like an act of rebellion And coincidentally, in these political times, it's, I think, even more needed.
Definitely. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I feel like a little bit sad of like one of my last question, but like kind of like to wrap everything up. So I wanted to talk about this space, Sazón Pilates Studio. You're opening very soon. And this feels very different. And we were talking about the colors and the different little things that you've done. And so talk to me about this space and why it was so important for you to open it in Bellflower. Honestly, like it street from where you were born.
Oh, literally like a couple minutes away from where I was born. I think it was very important to open it in Bellflower because of the historical significance it has, like for Black and Brown communities here in Bellflower. It was once predominantly like a booming town, and then it became more like a Black neighborhood, and now predominantly Latino neighborhood. So kind of just historically, right, the building is also historical, so my love for art history kind of ties into this building. But I wanted like a luxury experience for Black and Brown communities. We designed it so it's only 6 people because I have been a teacher for, I don't know, like 8-9 years, since 2018, right? That's 8 years. And like full time, right? Like bread and butter. So, you know, if I'm not teaching, I'm not making money, right? Full time since 2018. And I really wanted something where the client was benefiting, right? So I was working at big box studios where we have like 12 people or 20 people or like 30 people in a class. And as an instructor, realistically, I cannot help everyone. And I felt like I was doing a disservice. Especially because when I started working closer to home, I saw more Black and Brown people, and I really felt that we deserved better. And I wanted to create a space where Latinos, we feel seen and we feel empowered. And we're not just doing Pilates because social media is telling us that we should be doing Pilates, but we're doing Pilates because we want to improve our mobility, we want to improve our mental health, and we kind of want to just tap into that new aspect of wellness as well. And so that was really important. The colors that I chose are actually specifically related to Central America and Guatemala. I feel like when you go back home to Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Costa Rica, Belize, you know, the houses aren't blancas or cremita, right? It's like, no, right? Una casa amarilla, una casa verde, una casa azul, puertas rojas y anaranjadas. And it has this sazón, it has this energía. And, you know, even las camionetas, right? Te vas de un departamento al otro, es lleno de color. And I wanted that color and that energy and that vibrancy that our countries bring in the studio. I wanted us to feel connected to nature, connected to our home, wherever that might be. And that's why a lot of our decor is very natural and raw and organic product, because it's kind of just, you know, being in a place where you can really calm that central nervous system. There's something so powerful about walking like pebble streets in our countries, right? Or maybe they don't even have pebble, it's tierrita, right? But there's something so soothing and empowering and beautiful about those colors that it was really important to bring that richness of our culture inside, especially in a wellness space. Yeah, and even our equipment is designed like that as well, with the colors that we selected.
Yeah, and it feels like it. You know what I mean? That's what something I was telling. I was like, I love this clay color. But thank you so much, Myra, for. I mean, it's Michelle Myra, but you know, I'm like, I'm like, Myra. Oh, okay. Oh, that's so beautiful. For opening the doors for us to come here to have this amazing conversation, for us to get to know more about your history and your story and what Sazón Pilates means. You know, Sazón Pilates, Sazón Pilates Studio, and Sazón Grip. But before we go, I want to if you can tell our audience where they can find you, how can they support you, and when are you soft opening the studio?
You can find us at sazongrip.com, sazonpilatesstudio.com. On social media, you can find us at sazon.grip and at sazon.pilates.studio. and Sazón is con Z. Yeah.
En la O.
Sí, y acento en la O, pero Instagram doesn't let us put the tilde, porque, pero it's Sazón, yes.
Yes, Sazón.
And then you can find me personally at Michelle Myra Official on Instagram.
Yes. And when are you soft launching?
Soft launching, we're going to have like a little intimate cafecito, charcuterie board, y ¿qué más? Photo booth next Saturday, March 7th from 10 to 2. And then our schedule is going to go live on the 14th of March. And our machines get here on March 9th. So it's going to be like a really big week. Like it's all here. I think it's finally going to feel real. Yeah.
And this episode will come out on March 9th. So, yeah. So it's almost there. So it would have been already soft launched, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you are on the area, now there's a new Pilates studio. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you for inviting me. It's like such an honor, like, yeah, it is. It really is. It's just to be in a Central American safe space and to talk about our stories that kind of have never been told.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you. Well, bye-bye.
Para Centroamérica.